Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 170. And now you can wait 2 minutes while I go and mute my actual stream on YouTube. There we go. Okay, good evening to my guest this evening, who is Mitch, and AI, and also Joshua. How are you going, ladies and gentlemen?
Same old, same old.
AI's feeling quiet tonight, I think, or this
Mitch
morning.
never lets down with that one.
You there, buddy?
Yeah, how you going, AI? I can't. We can't hear you, AI. I don't know if you're muted or something. Yeah. Oh, maybe he's AFK for a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. As always, I'm going to ask people if they had. Yep. Good idea, Joshua. As always, I'm going to ask people if they have a first subject they'd like to start us off with. I'm going to start with Mitch because he's on the top right-hand corner, and we'll go clockwise. So, Mitch, did you have a first subject? I believe you wanted to talk about the local elections and stuff.
Yeah. From what there used to be observed about the local elections, it's Tories have taken a battering. Reform have made all of 2 gains, while Workers' Party of Britain made double that amount of gains, mainly the Rochdale, I believe, and one in Greater Manchester, I believe. So they're just taking over Muslim areas, I suppose. The Labour have made some progress, but it seems like in some areas like Tyneside and where was he? I can't remember. It was I can't remember. It wasn't Sunderland. It was somewhere else. Independents made a lot of gains as well, of sort of exasperation with the mainstream parties. So
I think it's the independence thing is quite interesting, Mitch. The same sort of thing has been happening down under in Australia recently, is that independents have been doing quite well. But the trouble is they're not the sort of independents that most of us would support. They tend to be a bit greeny and so on. But I don't know what you think about that one, Mitch.
Yeah, so for example, in West Midlands mayoral election, in West Midlands conurbation, like there's an independent candidate by the name of Ahmed Yaqub, who is just essentially Galloway 2.0, but he's just a brown version of him. All about talking about the Muslims feel betrayed by Starmer, so on and so on. The independents up in Tyneside, I mean, they're able to win because there's a binmen strike up there, and Labour have done bugger all about it. I'm going to what UKIP said about it, so that's why the independents have won. In terms of West Midlands, it looks like Labour have either made gains in terms of like upping their vote share, or they've taken seats off Tories, like Tamworth, for example, which is like probably one of the whitest areas of the West Midlands. Tories have lost so far. If they had 10 councillors in the area, they've shrunk down to only 1 councillor left in Tamworth, for example. Then you got like the Staffordshire PPC, where the vote share has gone down to 45. They only won by like 2% of the vote in the area. So it looks like, and keep in mind, Staffordshire, like especially rural Staffordshire, very strongly Tory area. So the fact that the Tories are losing vote share over here should generally send an alarm signal up to the 1922 committee, I believe they're called. I imagine Rishi Sunak's going to get angry WhatsApp messages tonight and tomorrow morning.
I don't know what you think, Mitch, but it seemed to me that although Conservatives did terribly, as everyone thought they would, there doesn't seem like there's a huge amount of enthusiasm for the Labour Party.
Wasn't that great?
Look, I'm no fan of Labour. I think Labour and the Conservatives are pretty much a uni pie. I don't think there's much difference in voting for either of those two. But, that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you. Again, I made this position clear before, but essentially we want the total collapse of all existing political parties across the world.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I would very largely agree with that.
Can I come in on what you were saying, Mitch? So just to ask a couple of things. You were talking about different I guess regional, local governments and that sort of thing. How is the mood in the air? What's your take on how people are actually feeling, where they're at?
It's like in a local area, you get a marketplace full of people looking for an alternative, but Reform just don't provide it. And Reform have pretty much got no outputs in my area. There was this one Reform sort of activist, he was wearing a Brexit party pin from a few years back. He was just walking around my town like a gormless chicken, just doing nothing. Meanwhile, 2 minutes to walk from where he was, there's just a marketplace full of people who would be receptive to some sort of right-wing party, but that's just what it is.
Sure. I mean, my impression is that I think we need to go through a process of the total legitimacy collapse before we try to make anything new. I don't think Reform has got the stones for what's required. That's my impression. And the legitimacy collapse, the democratic collapse, whatever you want to call it, we kind of need to get a bit more on the front foot about making it happen. One of the slogans I really like, as a really simple one, is just put it on your ballots. None of the above. Very simple.
The spoiled
and you can put that slogan
in other words.
Exactly.
AI. What's your take on any of this? If you could now connect.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you all hear me now at the moment?
We can hear you.
Yeah, you sound fine, mate.
Yeah,
you sound fine.
Fucking microphone, absolutely hate it. Yeah, so I guess we're talking about the local elections. Right? I've only caught the real tail end of this discussion. So I assume we were talking about the local election results
across Britain, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, on the whole, turnout. I think turnout was pretty low in all these local elections. The radical. I guess you could say the Green Party and people on the radical left have been able to organise, wins here and there. Reform, predictably couldn't manage to even pick up, any decent amount of seats because they're just a joke. And I think just most people don't really care. I mean, most people have checked out of politics. Really, they know it's a load of bullshit.
Local politics.
Yeah, I mean, people understand.
Especially local politics.
I like to speak on that when it's my turn, but yeah.
Right. I mean, they've just checked out of they've just checked out of politics in general. It's all bullshit. No matter who you vote for, you're voting for. I just put on there as my choice in the local elections. It was Police and Crime Commissioner. I just put a tweet out saying the choice is moral syphilis, or the moral syphilis with a slight tint of anarcho tyranny. So that was my choice. And that has probably been the choice for many people. I will say, though, and I will give them credit, is I've been seeing friends who have been involved with the Homeland Party on social media and in real life as well. And one of their candidates, I think it was in Hampshire, somewhere around there. There was they managed to get
Hartney and Whitney area.
Yeah. And there was one of their candidates. He managed to come third. The Tories won the seat. Lib Dems came second. He came third, and he beat Labour to third place. Now, bearing in mind the trend at the moment of the country, and results in and around across the UK, and bearing in mind the Homeland Party only really started effectively campaigning as a party a few months ago. I think that's quite an impressive result as things go, and it'd be interesting to see what happens from there on. I do like the general ethos of the party, that there is that it's not like where it stands different from other parties like Britain First and other people who claim to be on the right. There is a stronger element of right-wing intellectualism that goes with it, and that's the key really to all of it, because you can't have like a if you want to have like a Tommy Robinson style movement of just basic football thugs fighting for Zionism, then be my guest. But be my guest. But that will get you nowhere. And this sort of right-wing intellectualism that goes with in any political movement is always a positive, because that is the essence of creating a vanguard and vanguardism and the counter elite, and obviously infecting real change. If that's what you want. Preaching to already converted, but we've all seen those Bowden speeches. We all see what that sort of and very much the spirit of Bowden is very much pushed heavily by the Homeland Party, who I guess take great inspiration from his words and his thinking, and his speeches, which is again, it's another good thing. But I mean, on the whole, on this result, I don't really pay much attention to it. I never thought, by the way, that the Conservatives were going to win London. I saw the hype yesterday. That Khan was out, and the Conservatives, Susan Hall, was going to have a surprise victory. I never saw that for a second, because I mean the reality on the ground is that particularly in London, along with Birmingham and Manchester and other parts of the UK, which has a high subcontinent Asian population, they vote for their own ethnic group. They don't vote for their own ethnic interest, and London's no different. So, and given the demographics of London, the Labour victory there is, I guess, is an assured thing from now for the foreseeable. I mean, the only thing,
it's no longer. Look, I was born in London, AI, and it pains me to say so, but it's the true story. London is no longer an English or a British city. It just isn't. It's an overseas city, overwhelmingly.
Can I come in on all this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it, mate.
So, like, my view of the overall situation is just... So, like, I mentioned the whole legitimacy collapse concept, which I think is actually starting to really be apparent to even the normies at this point. I think the only way for the regime, and I have possibly a different conception of the regime than a few people around these parts, but I tend to think that the really dangerous parts of the regime are all behind the scenes, right? So they essentially have all these worthless puppets and frontmen and hollow people, right, running around, taking up all the visibility, okay? The problem is these wankers who really run things are so overconfident. They really believe they can manage something that has never happened before, which is a total legitimacy collapse around the world of democracy and the existing institutions. They think they're prepared to give us replacements. They think they're prepared to give us like fake revolutions. I mean, they've practiced fake revolutions many times before, as we all know. But in essence, what they're going to give us is going to look great, but smell like shit. And a lot of people are going to see through it, and the conflict will be ongoing once that becomes particularly clear. I also think possibly worth discussing is, well, honestly, the Australian situation. Do you mind if I get into like my topic, Duke?
Go for it, mate. Let's say this is you starting first topic for this evening on from your side. So yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys feel free to come in if I say anything you want to respond to, because I could go on for a while, honestly. But yeah. So I am involved in my local political scene, quite involved, and getting more involved. I know a lot of people, but we aren't part of the formal political scene. We were very much a political insurgency, not a violent one. Let's just anyone listening in, don't get your knickers in a twist. We're strictly political.
Peaceful in
how do I describe
peaceful
it?
in other
words?
Yeah,
peaceful, you know. And
totally peaceful and legitimate.
We understand, yes, exactly. We understand that there are certain possibilities that exist.
I'm sorry, but I have a good authority by a well-known politician that violence is the voice of the unheard.
Yes.
That's
just not when we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not when white people do it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I am
certainly not when everyone's favorite ethnic group does it.
Okay. Yes. UK government. I am quoting a Democrat politician, AOC. I don't agree with her views. I love the nation of Israel. I love the United Kingdom. I love Sadiq Khan. Carry on, Joshua.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, AI, for the important prayer of the entire dissident movement. We love the nation of Israel. We swear eternal loyalty. We want only the best for the Jewish people and all their little diaspora. And we really hope they keep in touch with each other and tell each other what they're up to, you know? It's just, you know, all working together, all those lovely people. I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Andrew. Anyway, the local scene that I'm involved with is tight, very tight-knit, and very active and very willing to do things, right? So what we did, I'll just say very recently, because I don't want to give out like exceeding amounts of information, but honestly, if people can find us, it's probably not even a bad thing if they're sympathetic. So I'm just going to refer to them as the local group. So our local group did a protest near a major shopping center. It wasn't super successful on that front, and I'm trying to convince them that, like, guys, protests mean shit to anyone. But we had the tiniest of traction. But the really good thing about the day was we all were getting along like a house on fire, okay? We were making plans, discussing considerations, talking about what we're actually doing that's probably going to be consequential, which is all the moves that we're making behind the scenes. The people who we call, and more importantly, the people who are calling us, because we are making waves and people don't know what to do about us. Any questions?
Just one question. So you're doing these, what are they, like demonstrations, public demonstrations?
Yeah, pretty small.
Yeah. Now, again, this isn't like me preaching to you or anybody. I would say, and this is just historic, you know, what I've understood to be like, look, when I've looked into elite theory, and that sort of thing, that demonstrations only work when you are demonstrating.
Pushing at an open door?
No, nothing like that. Demonstrations are used by elites or vanguard groups as a way of demonstrating their power to the masses. It's a way of demonstrating power to the masses. So if you take the not BNP, sorry, the BLM stuff, the Summer of Floyd 2020. Now, if you look at it in America, for example, that was a demonstration of the Democrat Party and the people who finance them and the Uniparty and everything else as a way of really rubbing it in the noses of, I guess you could say, Donald Trump supporters, people who are populist. And we saw the same with COVID and similar demonstrations in Europe, and in particular in the UK, and no doubt in Australia as well. I think there were similar things as well. And so, when people say protests for our side, it's kind of a waste of time, or it doesn't achieve anything.
You say that, and I tend to agree with you. Would you like me to offer some counterpoints, though?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, and I really do understand what you're saying. I am trying to red pill the local group on a bit of elite theory stuff, and like we should take the time we spend protesting and invest it elsewhere. So that's how much I agree with you. The little exceptions that I will make is that back during the COVID protests, I met lots of people, and they got lots of valuable experience by protesting. Now, I did a few interesting things during that time, but one of the things I got to learn, and Iron Duke might find this interesting because he's a military man, I got to really see what urban warfare might look like one day. Like, I don't want to overstate the amount that I saw and learned and experienced firsthand, but it's a bit of an education. Okay. But getting away from that, let's talk about what effective tactics look like in local elections. First of all, anything to convince people to at least pay attention.
Hang on a minute, Joshua. Can I just interrupt you? Joshua, can I interrupt you for 1 second, please?
Of course.
Just to make it very clear to YouTube, which is not a free speech platform, whatever you may or may not have seen about what urban warfare might look like in the future, this, of course, was entirely theoretical.
Yes, indeed.
Entirely theoretical. There is no support for that sort of thing from this channel.
I truly pray that the glorious powers that be ensure nothing but peace and non-violence within this nation. That is my sincere wish.
I just say, I remember very well in Victoria, I remember very well when the Labour leader of Victoria, dictator Dan Andrews, set loose the Victorian anti-terrorist police against
I saw them
peaceful
personally,
protesters.
like a lot of them.
Yeah, and he set loose these Victorian anti-terrorist police with their armored vehicles and their rubber bullets and their tear gas and all the rest of it against.
There was no ambiguity whatsoever. This was
they were basically tradies. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
tradies and their families who were peacefully protesting about not being allowed to go to work and support their families.
Yeah.
So from that, that's what I do remember happening in Australia very, very clearly.
Can I say a bit more about the tradies? Because that was quite an interesting little episode in the whole saga. And it's a bit instructive, I would say. So the tradies came in at a critical moment, and they were a sudden burst of, let's just say, burly, energetic men who were willing to get active all of a sudden, very active. And there was some very interesting things that happened. Like, we took over a bridge, like a major bridge, and just sort of partied on it for a bit. That was a hell of a moment. That was a great thing to take part in. But
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that probably made the news, didn't it? And the problem, though, was that the tradies kind of got undermined by their own unions. Now, I'm sure you can imagine that happening. So the unions in the Labour Party are like because
it's a uni-pie.
Yes,
Joshua, because it's a uni-pie. The idea that in Australia the Liberals and the Labour Party are separate is just as nonsensical as the idea that Labour and the Conservatives in the UK are separate. They're not really. They're a uni-pie.
Two sides of the same thing.
And to a very large degree, one could say the same about the Republicans and Democrats in America.
Oh, it's basically the same thing, right? It's just pathetic. Would you like me to continue, though?
Carry on, mate. But let's bear in mind, I don't want to really go over everything that happened during the lockdowns, but for now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'll bring it back around to something a bit more interesting, maybe. So I'll just finish and say, so the unions backstabbed the tradies. The tradies got disheartened and left as soon as they came, and only the hardcore people really stuck around much after that. There was also the let's say rubber bullet massacre at the Shrine of Remembrance and all sorts of other things that sort of demoralized and started to shut down the protests. All that said, there's still a lot of potential from the remnants of that movement, but I won't say more on that for now. Any thoughts on, I really don't want to just dominate here. So does anyone have any advice about running for a local election? Because I'm literally going to do that. That's my plan. I'm going to try and run as a councillor.
Well, it's a pity that we haven't got Ataman on at the moment, because I know he's got some experience in that sort of area.
As someone who many years ago did run for local election where I am, for a main party. This was before all the convert the fall to the dark side. I mean, all I could say is, wherever you stand, make sure you. I would say doing like door. I don't know if are you allowed to do door stepping in Australia?
I think we are allowed to do door to door. There might be some restrictions on it, but yeah, essentially yes, I believe.
Yeah, so. You can do door to door. Maybe if you got like a local, if it's like a local church or a village or town hall, depending on where you're standing, village or town
There are
hall.
a few. Sorry, there are a few community groups and think like local businesses that I'm somewhat friendly with. Community groups like MMA Club and my gym. I could probably see what I can do about winning over the church my mother goes to, because she's actually got an idea where we can perform some music together and see how that goes. As for other opportunities, my understanding is the ward, the actual, like, shall we say, district that I'm in, I live in it. I think it's pretty small compared to all the other districts, so I can actually get a lot done on foot. I think I have a variety of ways of pursuing the campaign. I think I'll try and play it as Trumpian as possible, like say barely acceptable, outrageous things all the time that people really want to hear.
Yeah, I mean that is depending on how you play it. That is a good tactic. I mean, for me, when I did it, and this is why I found most successful in my ward that I stood in. One of the biggest problems, and this was both in like data polling, which I had access to, I had to pay for it, like Ipsos Mori we have, and like real local data, was crime, and particularly burglaries. That was a big problem. And if you go because a lot of people were like white van men, independent traders, a lot of it was breaking into a property. And when I went around my ward, you could see CCTV, like home CCTVs, special reinforced doors, the work, so you could see this was a huge problem. And I went full on, like almost well, I basically I borderline calling for a crusade or jihad on crime itself and burglars. And I in the lecture I called them scumbags, I called them vermin, I called them disease of society. I went all out on that sort of stuff.
So I do have to be careful around that, but dude, that's already my plan. I'm going to go hard on crime. I'm going to go hard on the inaction, the corruption, and the laziness of the police, and just the incompetence. So like, and there's careful ways to do it. Now, I've already been discussing this with politically experienced people from the local group, right? So rather than saying we're going to change the policies around the police, which we do not have the power to do, that's the state government. What we're going to say is that we're going to like protest, and I know that sounds lame and fake and gay, but protesting from a position of having council seats, that's a bit more interesting. We're going to oppose them. We're going to criticize them. You see what I mean? Like, we can do that. We might not be able to like give them orders, but we can make life a little bit more interesting for the police. And a lot of people in the area are really, really ready for that. Really ready for that.
Yeah. As a word of warning, though, you're no matter. When I say I'm not saying this as a negative way towards you. I say you're radical. You're radical. Your movement. Your movement are radical. We're all radicals. We get it. But most people that you will meet, 99% of them aren't radicals, and they will be scared of what you and your organization will, and what you say. And you have to find a like I'm going to say like a centrist. You have to find a middle
sensible centrist way of dressing this up.
Yeah, where you don't come across as, because I say there's a fine line between clownish Lawrence Fox politics and boring and boring liberal politics. You have to find that center or the persona. You have to have that center persona, and Trump. The reason why he is the funny thing with Trump is there is this continuity character of the he embodies that Henry Ford style American man, which Americans love. Hence, I mean, he plays, and he knows that. I think a lot of his personas was carefully brought together by many different people, and it works well for him in the GOP. And I would say for you, if you and your organization, I would say as a form of advice, I would say you need to make it so you're not just you can't disturb the lives of the people that you'll be representing.
Oh, that's a very good point.
But you need to find a way of collectively, speaking to them in a, well, I guess what Bowden said, speaking to them in a physiological way, where you speak to them at the front of the mind, the back of the mind. So everything you say and do, it has to resonate on them in a deep and personal way that they can see it. And even just bare observation, because if you're running and say the Labour Party where you are has done something and it's just self-evident it's unpopular, and you might think, well, I'm not going to mention it because it's self-evident and I don't want to sound like a bit of a normie. No, you just say it, just straight up, just say it how it is presented, and then you can always put your sort of like a sort of semi-based spin on it. But and of course, and the other thing is when you do stuff like that, and this is I know it's from personal experience, you will have hit piece. You may depending on successful, you may have hit pieces. You may have journalists
interference in my life.
Interference, and I would say, given and this is from pure advice, never engage with it. I think if you were like an MP or people like a Donald Trump figure, they have to engage with it because that's part of the part of the game. For you from the local level, and what you want to achieve, I personally, responding wastes a lot of energy, and saying nothing because it's local politics, and in reality, when we're not, none of us are that important, so people won't remember. And so it's. But as I say, I would say you find a good balance and try not to disturb people's life, because that's one thing I did. Is I when I went into it too quickly, and I was at the time I was representing the Conservative Party, and the party got really cross with me. Locals were a bit unhappy, and it all got a bit. I was going in for like populist, UKIP adjacent sort of energy, and it just didn't work out well. And I learned from that. But what I did learn from that is on a one-to-one basis, people agreed with it. But what people say to you one-to-one and what they agree, and then what they are when they're in a mass group, because this is where the masses come in. In a mass, people will repeat what the ruling ideology of the day is. That's why the masses are weak. That's why the masses are feminine. That's why we reject all bottom-up stuff. We all agree in elite top-down elite theory and all that. And so this is why it's a difficult balance to play. But if you can do it right in a sort of sensible way, you'll be you'll be a genuine and that's what the Homeland Party here have done. They haven't done anything which is like, as I say, they haven't engaged in low tier, low IQ politics, and also they haven't really engaged in any low IQ racism. And when I say low IQ racism, it's this is the other thing where it comes into it is we can talk about the immigration and everything, and of course most of that comes up in today's society, immigration topics. I've at the view, well, instead of talking about it on the individual, like how many Somalians have moved into the flat down the road, why don't we talk about the landlords who are the people who are pushing this? Why don't we talk about those, the same construction industry people who are wanting to build on green present land, who support mass immigration, involved with NGO networks, and also fund the Tory party? You see that this is where you have to think in that terms. And sorry, I'm rambling now, but
would you like me to come in on some of what you've raised?
Yeah, certainly. I'll let you take over from that.
Thank you. So one point I want to make that ties into let's not bother people, right? It's just simply my strategy is not going to be very public until it's really ready to go. And I've got a lot of existing support and people willing to work with me. Okay, that's more or less the plan. And if that doesn't emerge, it's fine. I can be a paper candidate and just rear out some preference votes. That's fine. But if I get a good network, and this is the thing that I'm trying to convince my group to do, like ignoring the making a public demonstration stuff. That's not that effective. What we should be doing is like a style of work that I'm going to call link to link. So, okay, you are a person, you have this cause, you have some friends with you. Who else do you know? Okay, you're going to bother all your family and friends? No. What you do is you sense compatibility with what you're putting out there, and you just work with whatever you get. You're not trying to turn them into someone who's going to vote for you or someone who's going to support you and do all sorts of work for you, at least not right away. You're just trying to build rapport with as many people as you can, nudging them carefully towards the topics that are going to matter. And you take what you say to them, you take the conversation, really, what they're giving you and what you're trying to help them with. And really, more than anything, before you're saying, hey, can you give us money? Hey, can you give us a vote? Hey, can you give us all this shit? Hey, can you pay attention to us? Which is all narcissistic crap that everyone is sick of. You absolutely have to focus on giving. So this person is interested. This person is open to what we're saying. Therefore, let's do something. Let's sit down with them in their house and let them just talk about their life story. There are a lot of people who love to do that, right? Elderly people, for example. And you sit there for an hour, you hear a nice story, and you say, that was lovely. So do you mind if I mention a few things that I don't like about the local council and why I'm running for this seat? And she'll be like, yeah, of course. I'll be happy to listen now. You see how I'm going about this? What the philosophy is here? So yeah, come in, AI, if you like.
No, I totally understand, and that's the sort of that I totally agree with that wholeheartedly, and yeah, I mean, talking to people, and I think somebody in chat said, again, just sort of reiterated what I was saying earlier, is that most people fundamentally change, but they fear it. People will want change, but they fear it, and without sounding like your stereotypical villain here, but people don't know what they want. People need to be they need to be led. But there is that fundamental truth to that is ultimately it's kind of like the nervous kid standing at the edge of the pool. He wants to jump in, but he hasn't got the bollocks to do it. You need to be that sort of overbearing parent behind and give him a good push. Push in. There you go.
Okay. So, not to
could I
come in, Andrew?
Guys, could I just say, AI, I'm going to ask you for your first topic next. So before I do that, could I'd just like to ask Mitch what his thoughts are on the discussion so far. So Mitch, what are you thinking about what people have been saying so far?
Well, yeah, like the turnout. I mean, apparently the turnout for these local elections was 13%. So I kind of generally told you that.
Which is tiny.
No one relishes. Yeah, but I mean, not even a fifth or 15% of the year, but just generally
that's good.
Bad. Yeah, but
in a way, in some ways it is. It could potentially be in some ways, because if you can organise, you don't need that many people to support you. There is that.
Exactly. Yeah. We're talking about wards of roughly 18,000 people. If the voting turnout is something like 20%, and I get 2,000 or 3,000 people, that's huge. That's like a blowout.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do the legwork. Anyway,
absolutely, I do agree with that.
So take us where you want to go, and I will have to.
Sorry, I was just trying to get Mitch's views on what he thinks was going on here, because he started us off with local politics. So.
Yeah, because I mean, you get the Green Party, for example, independents who. That's the thing with the Green Party is. I won't be surprised if because I mean, let's say after the Boomers are no longer a thing, I wonder how much the Green Party would grow in terms of parliamentary seats, because they've got such a big presence in local politics. Because I mean, like you take my local area, you'll see Green Party types working down food banks or whatever. So they know how to work local politics. And at some point, it will pay dividends parliamentary wise at some point. I don't know which areas, but I mean, it's just there's a reason why. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Go on.
I was gonna say, I also knew like he was a local businessman, so he just had a very, very rural outlook. So he just focused on rural issues, which, given my area, is quite rural. But because he was able to do that, that's how he got a seat. So, whereas Reform, they just could do the complete opposite. They're just relying mainly on, they're affiliated with Farage and they've got GB News on their side, but they don't do anything local.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man.
Listen, could I just say before you carry on there, Joshua, that
all good.
The thing about the Greens are very good at organising. They are very good at organising.
Talking about the Australian Greens in particular here, are you?
Yeah, well, also the Australian Greens, the British Greens, they're all pretty good at organising. But, and this is important, let us go back to the first thing that AI said when you were talking about trying to organise locally, is that if the regime, and in Australia and Britain, they do support the Greens and they do support net zero and all this other nonsense, which is just going to make every ordinary person much poorer, effectively, one way or another. Because the regime supports the Greens, they get away with doing stuff which no one on the right would possibly be able to do, like, for example, stopping traffic all the time and all this sort of stuff. No one on the right would be allowed to get away with that.
Yes. I would love to further discuss the Greens, but I just want to pick up on something Aubrey has said, which is a really good comment. Also, most people are not visionaries. You need to show them how your plan is going to not disrupt their lives, but help their lives. Yeah, she's quite right there. There's a lot of really basic issues.
Yeah, no, I think she is. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. There's a lot of really basic issues that are just completely buggered up by the local council as it stands, and they're just pretending everything's great. We're all beloved. We do all this consultation with the community, and all we hear is positive feedback. Aren't we all great? Patting yourself on back, jerking off, right? And they're hated, right? And they're rightly hated. They're really only in because of the political cartel of the major parties. Okay, they've got very little else going for them.
Sure.
And I think the Greens are in the mix. The Labour and Liberal types, like Labour, is really in charge of the local area, and I'd love to knock Labour down a peg or two in any way if possible. These are all the types of people in the local council who don't really give a damn. They just want to move on to bigger and better things after adding this to their CV. You know, really hollow, spineless people.
Yeah, and there's also quite a lot of jobs for the boys and grifting and all the rest of it that goes on in local councils as well. And I mean, that's true of all local councils everywhere. So
yes, but I'm working with some people who have done the research, the work. They've gone to council meetings and asked all the prickly questions, right? And they also know all the details. Like, they know how to say, like, council spends X amount of money just on wages for council staff, yet everything sucks, right? That's a good basic campaign point. So rather than just the flamboyant stuff, we're going to have the meat and potatoes issues covered as well as a group, right? And I'll tell you, the local group has more than me interested in running. We might have 3 people, okay? And there are 11 wards or seats, okay? I reckon we can get more people to run. And if we become strong enough, we could essentially do well enough in and of ourselves that we can kind of spread a bit of the what we've got going to the other wards and the other candidates. So if we get as many as 6 people in, we will actually have a majority on the council. And then we can do things like get rid of the CEO. But even if we get 2, 3, 4, whatever, that gives us a lot to work with, especially if the other councils are as weak as we think, and we could win them over. Politics is full of turncoat bullshit, so entirely possible. And anyone else want to come in or move the topic?
Unless anyone else has got anything to say, I'm going to ask AI if he's got a first topic for this evening.
Yeah, I was going to say, apart from the local elections, I was just going to talk about, I guess, what's been happening also in the UK and the United States. which has been these student campus protests by students who are pro-Palestine, and the general sort of how it's been played out on the screens, the general response from everyone involved, and it's been quite interesting to watch because I can't really make much heads or tails of it. Do you guys all know what I've been talking about? It's been like in California, Columbia, Austin, but all over the place.
Well, sorry,
AI. Could I just say, yeah, I think we do, but also I think we need to address academic agents' view on this, which I don't totally agree with myself, but maybe some of us do, some of us don't. So yeah, I think most of us do know something about this, and carry on, AI.
Yeah, I mean, so there's been protests, and recently there's been these counter protests, which has had strange. They call them like these frat boys, and there's been like this whole white boy summer sort of stuff has come up again. And what's quite interesting is looking into it. In I believe in Columbia and Austin, I should say. Start with that. The frat boys there have had like the organization has been done by like a former staffer for George Bush. This is like just one example. One of these frat boy leaders also went on Fox and said that they're doing it for like the nation of Israel and everything. And so I basically put like something out that saying, and this comes back to like what I was saying about political action is if it's just incredibly it's just ridiculous to see, because if you're going to do anything, you really should be doing it for your own society and your own community and your own people. It shouldn't be done as a way to facilitate outside grievances or even outside nationalistic patriotic feeling. And I was watching some of like there's this clip going around of like these group of them doing like monkey chants in front of this really fat black woman, and I was looking at it and I was thinking to myself, like, because they're all wearing like these American flag sort of get up, like Uncle Sam sort of stuff. And one thing it got me thinking today is everyone's going, oh yeah, groping, oh it's really funny. But I was thinking to myself, there's something really, really astroturfed about that. Like, for instance, I was thinking, what happened to the day of like the Confederate flag, like and Confederate pins, as like a form of like defiance against government? Because that was a very popular symbol back in the day. I imagine Iron Duke, you probably remember that, and it wasn't just in the South. It was in the North, when they had festivals, like these music festivals and all the things. It was like a form of a symbol of defiance, or even like in politics as well. It was like a universal symbol. So there was that. And also the other thing was seeing that footage of them doing the monkeys sort of impersonation in front of this fat black woman. In 2020 or in any other scenario, that would be like the rolling news story. I mean, we remember that Sandman kid. Remember that fake native veteran that walked up to him and was like banging that drum, and he was sort of standing there smiling. I remember that, like, there was like weeks of news coverage of those Covington boys. That was it, endless coverage. And with this story, this is like, I saw like a one online article, and that was it. It's like there's been no repercussion for those young like boys who were involved with all that today. And so it is, something about that whole story, number one, doesn't sit right. And also going going back to the whole pro-Palestine, the pro-Palestine movement, are also led. There was a faction that the BBC were interviewing. I saw the other day, which was the Jews for Palestine. So, this on the whole just seems like one big psyop wrapped in one other psyop to produce even one bigger psyop, and
nothing is authentic.
Well, nothing's authentic about it, and also, it kind of feels like this is like just they all want us to look at these college campuses, and maybe I'm like the ultimate psyop because I'm talking about it in distant spaces, so maybe I'm also the big problem. I'm the
not enough of that.
I'm the Manchurian candidate here, bringing it all down. But it's like they want us to really look at this and feel good that the police and the frat boys are like beating up these
totally agree.
I
totally agree.
And I'm standing there, I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking.
I think you're 100% right there, mate. I really do.
I'm standing there and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going on. This doesn't feel real. What else is happening around me? What am I missing here? This is like, like one of those really strange fever dreams that you get. Like where you have a dream and then you realize you're in a dream because people that if you're having a dream that there's someone in there that and you realize, oh, this isn't real. I'm in the dream. I better wake up, and you wake yourself up. It's kind of like that, looking at it like that. I'm like, yeah, this ain't real. What's going on here?
There's a couple things in the chat.
I do think there's a lot of disinformation going on. Hang on, I do think there's a lot of disinformation going around here. I mean, look, my own basic view on this is I am not pro-Israel at all, and I'm not pro-Palestinian at all. I really don't care. My actual bottom line is I don't care if they all kill each other. Not Britain's problem, not Australia's problem. They're not our people, any of them. That's my basic issue with this. Can you align with the pro-Palestinian guys? No, I don't think we can, because they are not our friends. I know AA has tried to argue that you can. I don't agree with him on this. I think he's wrong. I adopt a strictly neutral line. I do not care if the Palestinians and the Israelis want to kill each other, so long as it doesn't involve our people.
Agreed.
And I get that the Israel lobby, especially in the United States, has an enormous amount of power. I know this is true. I think it's less true in Britain than it is in America, although obviously Israel has quite a lot of power in Britain as well, but nowhere near as much as it does in America. I just think this is a distraction for our guys to a large degree.
Can I suggest something? I do.
Go for it.
Thank you. So there's a couple of people in chat. So saying while we are all talking about this, no one is talking about Gaza. We've unfortunately started talking about Gaza. But he said also we should fuel the fire if we can. I'm not entirely sure about that one. I think the fire is going on, like they're fueling it themselves. What I'd like to suggest though is, so the Israelis and the Palestinians and their supporters around the world are just like they're completely shameless in making everyone try and care about their fucking blood feud and making them give them something. I want support. I want money. I want this. I want that. They're fucking children. However, could we get something out of them if we say, like there's a lot of merit to no, fuck off. We're not interested in all your shit. So I'm swearing a bit too much. But we could also go, maybe if you give me something in exchange that's worthwhile. Now, they may not go for that, but it's just...
You won't get anything in exchange if you ask me.
They probably won't.
No, I don't think they will.
It's kind of like... So you're probably right, Iron Duke, that the answer is basically, no, I'm not on your side, go away. Leave my country.
I mean, the problem that... and this is what I think AA was getting at, is his argument is effectively there's no better if you want the special privileges that this lobby in the West has over all things and everyone else. If you want that to be undone, and all the ills that go with it to be outweigh, which, let's be honest, is a great many ills for everyone in everyone's nations. This is I guess his argument is to align with the energy that is around at the moment. But the problem is, and this is where it is a problem, is that, and you think if you're thinking on the lines of like a coalition building as like a revolutionary stuff at the in the Soviet Union or Iran or what have you. It depends who were the leaders in the forefront of that revolution, because there were many other factions in that revolution who took part, very active, and then got ice picked quite literally in some cases at the tail end of it. And so the problem that you've got is that there is this energy now where the Israeli lobby in America is being more questioned. That undying loyalty and unspoken loyalty isn't there as it used to be. I think that's freaking a lot of establishment types in America out. This is why they've responded like this in some way. But at the same time, as I pointed out, on the pro-Palestine side, there's also, there's also other presences involved there. So the problem is, the question that I think this being split on the right is not a question of, this is fundamentally, yes, it isn't our problem. It shouldn't be our problem. This is like a separate blood feud. But at the same time, when that the group has such an influence on society, I mean, even like they passed that, they were going to pass that, was it that bill?
Oh, could I just AI? Could I just AI? Could I just say that, look, one of the things I noticed about this was that the British government was willing and able to use the Royal Air Force and possibly the Royal Navy, but certainly the Royal Air Force, to shoot down Iranian drones that were aimed at Israel. Yeah, very, very expensive to do that, by the way, because every time you fire an RAF missile at one of these quite inexpensive Iranian drones, that's like at least $250,000, worth of money. But they're able to do that, but they can't stop rubber dinghies full of illegal economic migrants coming across the channel, And quite honestly, I'd sooner the British government use the British Armed Forces in a peaceful way, of course, to defend the British Isles from this invasion of illegal immigrants. Now, the illegal immigrants are not even the major problem. The major problem is the legal immigrants, the unending mass immigration into the British Isles. Yeah, also true to a slightly lesser extent in Australia, and only a slightly lesser extent. But they won't spend any money on that. But they'll spend enormous amounts of money defending Israel, or indeed defending Ukraine.
Actually, I Sonny Jim, the comment you just brought up saying is freaking Ben Shapiro out. This is I believe that people like Ben Shapiro and basically in the establishment right and the establishment as a whole, they like the idea of constant conflict. They like the idea of division. So in politics, like in America, it's always man, woman, black, white, Republican, Democrat, blue, red, what have you. An age, young and old, that sort of stuff. And I believe that in the establishment, they want the idea of the left to be filled with, I guess, what you would call to be third worldist, people who are anti-Israel, and they want everyone on the right to be, evangelical Zionist. That's like the dream. That's the dream sort of setup. And a lot of there is a movement in the GOP and the Republicans where and many members of the GOP are effectively, I mean, their loyalty, if they're going to, it's going to lie anyway. It does lie to Trump. It lies in one figure, and Trump has, he has said that he's been a big defender of Israel, and during his time as president, of course, we all know he moved the capital to Jerusalem and everything, and of course, he was then betrayed by Benjamin Netanyahu towards the end, when you had all the stuff with the election, and there was always that felt betrayal. And I think that Trump did recently put a post out there saying as much to that as well. So I think one of the problems is that they have lost control of a great deal of narratives, and that not everyone's a groyper on the right, but I think a lot of people are not even noticing. They're just saying, you know what? Why should all my political capital go to Israel and Ben Shapiro? Why should it? Why can't it go to like North Carolina or Georgia or wherever the hell they live? That's the sort of thing that's I feel that more people are sort of waking up to.
Look, I tend to agree with Michael K, 19th century fan in the chat, noticing that Ben Shapiro is more passionate about Israel than the US is anti-Semitic. And let us be honest, if you watch Ben Shapiro, and particularly if you've watched him this year, he is vastly more passionate about Israel than he ever gets about the US. Like, vastly more. It's just beyond argument,
Well, he doesn't care about the browning of America, but if you ask him,
not at all.
What do you think
not at all.
But if you were to ask him, what do you think about the idea of the browning of Israel? I imagine he yeah. I imagine he does have a view, sort of views on that, but.
Oh, and incidentally, this is another one that's worth bringing up. Again, Michael, 19th century fan in the chat, points out that the cost of the Biden pier in Gaza is going to be about 300 million. Yeah. Now, I also noticed the Royal Navy are sending ships to go and help with this. Yeah. And I have to tell you guys that if you're going to have a pier which goes from the land out to the sea, that's going to have to be defended. And that means there are going to be American, and presumably, since the Royal Navy is sending ships to help with it, British boots on the ground there. Why? I wouldn't expend one single British serviceman's life for this constant fucking war that goes on between Israel and the Palestinians, because neither of them are our friends, in my opinion. They both hate us.
I mean, that is a lot for a pier. I mean,
well, it's going to be quite a big pier, from what I understand, mate.
I presume. So, what's going to happen with Gaza, the Gaza Strip afterwards? Is it going to be, redeveloped, like bulldozed, redeveloped, and sort of absorbed into Greater Israel, or some?
Who knows, mate? Who knows? But all I'm pointing out is this pier, which, as I say, the Royal Navy is sending Royal Navy and Royal Fleet auxiliary ships out there to help the Americans build. This is going to involve American and British service dudes being in Gaza. Why? No reason whatever that I could work out.
Redevelop into some Dino boxes.
And like my disagreement with AA is purely that I don't think there is any way that these pro-Palestinian types are ever going to support us and our people. They're just not, any more than the Israelis will.
I mean, you're pretty correct. It's just
neither of them are our friends. I don't like either of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd even think if you were to be Machiavellian with them, I would say that the dialectic that they consume is so strong that if you tried to even, talk about the ADL or anything like that, they would just spurg out and say, "We're not talking about that. We're you Nazi. We're talking about human rights or some sort of gay liberal shit like that." And so, that I don't even know how you could even be Machiavellian with them. That is something that I am a bit uncertain about. How could you try and convince them? Because I think any approach by anybody like on the American right, like if Pat, I'm just trying to think of like someone who is like a Pat Buchanan or someone who's been critical of Israel on the right in the past. If they went to a campus, well, they'd just be they would just be labelled a fascist by those very same students. I could not conceive of them than anything else.
Well, I mean, again, Michael K, 19th century fan in the chat, pointed out, do you remember, and I do, when America, France, and Britain sent troops to Beirut, which was the last time we sent troops to that part of the world in large numbers. Loads of American Marines got blown to smithereens there. Quite a lot of Frenchmen got killed, and the British troops were in constant firefights for months. It's just don't send our soldiers there. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and Israel has been just disgusting in terms of the way that they will just leverage every supposed ally into doing their will. We all know this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Aubrey makes a good point in the chat. A good American president would be concentrating on building the wall with Mexico, not a bloody pier in Israel or Palestine or wherever you
it's
want
super
to
simple.
go.
You just say, why don't we just say, Israel, good luck. We've given you some stuff. Off you go. See how you do yourselves, It's a very simple argument to make, and I just don't hear anyone making it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be giving them stuff. I wouldn't be sending up RAF jets to shoot down
What I'm saying,
completely nothing to do with us.
I'm referring to the stuff they've already been given. I'm not saying we give them anything more.
Fair enough. Mitch, you haven't said anything for a while, mate. What's your take on some of this stuff? Mitch, you haven't said anything for a while, mate. What's your take on some of this stuff?
I mean, I don't really take a side on all Israel versus Palestine stuff because, for one, I don't fully understand it, and B, a lot of the people who sided with Palestine reflexively, but just doing it over hatred of Israel, over the JQ stuff, and it's like, okay, it's essentially like the Poles who hate the Russians so spurgily, without regard to themselves, like their patriotism is more towards their hatred of Russia rather than love for their own country, and all of the right fall into the same trap in regards to the whole the JQ in regards to Israel and so on. They just become a situation where, because they hate that certain group, that hatred of that group for just for reasons, if you're familiar with it, trumps above their sort of national interest, in the sense that, oh yeah, we don't get anything if Palestine win. Oh sure, yeah, we get, Israel no longer exists. Okay, we're all the Israeli lot going to go. They're going to come over to us, and so nothing really changes for us in terms of that AIPAC lobby. They'll just be rebranded as something else, some sort of Jewish diaspora lobby. Nothing will materially change in the West, even if Palestine were to win. So why bother backing the Palestinians, especially when you consider they don't like us anyway? When you look at the supporters over here, who, in some ways, they're more vocally anti-white in some ways than the Israel lobby, because they'll just say, "Oh, because they see Israel as a white supremacist colony or whatever." It's just like, nah, why bother allying with such filth?
Yeah, I don't think either group are our friends, frankly. That's my real final thoughts on it. Israel, not our friends, nor are the Palestinians.
I mean, honestly, until it turns into more of a world war, and it might, the whole thing is almost irrelevant. Like, we should just be focusing on our own stuff. I mean, this might be a little bit too close to home, but there is such a strong tendency to just always, no offense, like I get it's fun, there's reasons to do it, but this tendency amongst our spaces, shall we say, to just pick a headline, pick news, and ramble about it. I no offense, but like, we need to do more stuff that is action. I'm not aware of many victories, many like decisive, things done by our people. It's all like meetings in secret and stuff. If it isn't just talking online.
Yeah, I think that's easy to say. I think it's also we have no power at the moment, mate. We really have no power whatsoever. And
we don't need power. We don't need power. We need to get organized and active about what we can do with whatever it is that we have.
Possibly. Guys, what's your views on this AI? Mitch, what do you think about
that? Well, going back to what we said about like the Green Party and stuff. It's difficult because I believe I'm number one. Go back to what my original point was basically, that there will be these like the frat boys stuff. Effectively, the regime has given them carte blanche for tactical bigotry. That they've been allowed to behave like this, targeting blacks and browns. And so when I look at this as a whole, my point is, I'm just doing the whole caution thing. Don't think this is like a win or anything. Don't be lulled into thinking. Because I know a few friends, people like raw nationalists and people like that adjacent group, I saw taking it as like a win sort of stuff, high fiving each other. And I don't view it like that at all. I don't think it's a win. It's just another way of even if they aren't aware of it, those involved, it's just that they are doing the bidding, of doing something else, not yourself. And I don't like the idea of everyone just being pawns of some, just being pawns for another group.
Actually, I really think that's important to pick up on the whole, all this is the grand chessboard. All this is like, the only real players are people like Putin and Trump. And I'm just so sick of it. I don't care. I have every intention of shooting my shot. And where it lands, there it hits. And I guess you could say, as I've said before, I'm not very frightened of what the regime can do to me. And you might think, no, Josh, you don't realize, they'll do things to you and people close to you. And I don't think that anyone is ready to fight this until you can look at both of those possibilities and say, yeah, I can accept that.
Up to a point, I'd agree with you, Joshua. Although I'd like it again. I would say when you're looking at the Greens, for example, or when you're looking at the Palestinian process, or a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, when we were looking at the Black Lives Matter process, and of course, a good example in Australia is there was a huge Black Lives Matter protest in Melbourne in which the Victorian police basically were just nice and kind and all the rest of it. Totally different to when there were anti-lockdown protests, which were mostly by white people.
You're quite right.
But anyway, there is a different way. There is a different way the regime behaves to these protests, because as I said right at the beginning of the stream, these protests, they have the regime's nod. They're allowed to do this. They want them to do this because basically they're supporting what the regime wants. In the case of the Greens, it's net zero. Black Lives Matter, it's mass third world immigration, etc. There is a difference in the way those protests are treated to anything that we might do on the right.
Yes, which is why I'm trying to get us away from protests. But there are all sorts of actions. All it takes is a little imagination. And to be honest with you guys, I'm not really right-wing anymore. Like, I used to be left-wing, then I switched to the right, more or less, and now I'm just like, I don't even care. Whoever I can work with to whatever goal is worth working towards is my stance now. But can I just pick up on Aubrey in the chat? So she's saying, look how the left plays. Cancel culture, they ruin lives if someone says something they don't like. So how do we counter that? They play dirty. Are you guys, I think that's a really good question. Do you guys want to talk about that?
I think they can do that again for what I just said, Joshua. The reason the left can do this is that they get, at very least, tacit support from the regime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite true.
Even if the regime doesn't come right out, and sometimes they do, and say, this is what we want, that all these people are doing with their cancel culture is doing something that the regime wants them to do.
True.
And also,
so it's a totally different story. Look, if we tried to do that, we would not be allowed to get away with it.
So,
sorry,
I guess this comes to the thing about dirty tactics, right? So, Aubrey is talking about they play dirty. And many people suggested we on the right should either be honorable or play dirty. I'm kind of like of two minds about all of that. Anyone else want to speak? Sorry, AI, you were trying to come in.
Yeah. So one thing I do tend to like to do is I also and something I've spoken on before is a lot of people like to draw comparisons with revolutions or revolutionary style movements of the mid-century, and particularly, the mustache man and the big chin man, and I would say in both scenarios, especially the mustache man, when he was about, there were many aspects of that society, who were on his side, tacitly speaking. He had elements of the Prussian military officer order that was somewhat agreeable. He had courts. He had nationalistic elements in aspects of society which were on his side, and that helped him, and that benefited his movement. Same in Italy as well. Very much same. And also the same could also be said. You could draw it to with Pinochet in Chile. The reason why he was so successful was because the leftists there wasn't that
stranglehold over all the existing institutions.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it just doesn't exist. So when Pinochet came in, the coup happened, and I know a lot of them say, it's CIA and everything. Well, the CIA weren't really involved in that one. It's because there was no need for it, because there wasn't any need for it. But I mean, going back to that, so that was how that was achieved. But for us, is that we have to really look at every institution, because they learn the mistakes of the past, the governing elite. Every institution is explicitly anti-traditional.
Can I come in now? So I somewhat agree with you. Like, you've got a reasonable lay of the land, but I'd really like to point out some of the precedent. So we're talking about a few figures of history, and one in particular. My limited understanding of their biography is that they had a number of experiences that turned them into who they were. And then from virtually scratch, they built their own power base. They just kept at it, growing logically and effectively. And the support from, the remaining Prussian nobility or bits of the military and all of that came later. Those are just a bunch of you did all the hard yards, and now a couple of people want to jump on the bandwagon once you've already essentially won or in position to. I think I recognize that our present situation is probably worse. But on the flip side, dude, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm building from scratch, and I have no intention of stopping.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
think it's a lot more. I mean, I wish you luck, but it's a lot more complicated today than it was in the 1920s.
Yeah, I mean,
Agreed.
all I'm saying is you're going to have different obstacles to face. I mean, for example, back then, those people had to deal with a regime that operated using hard power. So basically, it would be gangs of communist thugs that want to break your bones and leave you battered and bleeding on the streets. Today, they will just shut down your bank account. They'll do like hit pieces on you. They'll try and isolate your friends from you, and you'll become a social pariah. That's
effeminate crap. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. You're very right. The problem is, though, twofold in that approach that the regime takes. One is the soft power tactics. Me personally, I'm pretty well prepared for that. Like, I don't care. And I'm not going to lose all that many friends. I'm already sorting the wheat from the chaff in that department, and I still have plenty left to work with. Okay? Secondly, when it comes to the regime using hard power, it's been too long. They don't really know how to anymore. And the game has changed. They have put so many eggs in the basket of, violence is wrong, guys. You can never be violent, don't you know? And if they turn around and start doing it, a lot of people go, what is going on? Like what's happening during the COVID protests. But I guess the bottom line is I'm expecting the regime to make mistakes that we can capitalize on, including the various ways they're going to misuse their force. And they will resort to force because they're cowards. They don't know anything else. To save their skins, they will do anything. And unfortunately, I will do anything as well.
Well, up to the point that's legal, Joshua, of course.
Of course. I have no convictions, no prior convictions.
Up to the point that's legal, Joshua. Of course.
Yes. No, you're right, sir. You're right, sir. I will be a good boy. I will be a good boy.
Yeah, no.
I would just
keep everything legal above board, guys.
Could I just point out, in Britain, for example, we have the very recent case of Sam Melia, who was going around putting up stickers on lampposts and so on that said things like it's okay to be white, who was given 2 years in prison not long ago in Britain.
You're quite right.
For putting up those sorts of stickers. Completely harmless, did not call for any violence, did not suggest violence to any particular groups, but merely for doing that, he was jailed for 2 years. And the judge in the case, who incidentally is quite well known for, like, if a pedophile comes before him, he will not jail that person. The same judge. He will not jail them at all, not even for a month. But the judge in the case of Sam Melia actually turned around and said that no, putting up those stickers wasn't illegal, but I'm still sending you to prison for 2 years.
Sure. Can I pick up on Aubrey again? Problem is, you get into politics and you have to play the game, which means you become a bit of a prostitute to the backers funding you. It's the quid pro quo. So I'm not relying on any funding. I will go fully independent. I will stand on my own, but I do have allies. And our alliances are not based on things like money. We were all in the trenches of COVID. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us. And that forged some bonds. And that also taught us a lot. And we're not interested in money. We're not even that interested in power. Power is a means to an end. Power is the means to ends like being free, being sovereign, and just being able to get the basics of life functional. Because we're heading into some very dysfunctional territory, and I think we all know that. And this, let me put it this way. I have every intention of being a good boy, following the rules. It's the best of my ability. But there are eventualities that I am prepared for.
Okay. I get what you're saying, Joshua, but we're on YouTube.
We are on YouTube. I understand, and I should respect that. It's just that I'm tired of dancing around the point. We all know we need to get serious, and you can kind of tell who is serious in the dissident space.
Well, I think we need to get serious. I think we are serious, but obviously we will never break the law because, I think we all are serious, but we will not break the law because obviously you are not allowed to do that, Joshua.
I see.
Not on live streams, okay?
Of course.
But yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. But yeah, I don't know. Look, I do think that there's some truth in what you say. I also think you've got to be realistic about the amount of wiggle room they will give you, and they won't give you all that much wiggle room if you're on the right. They won't.
I'm not really on the right.
You will not get anything like what they will. No, I know you're not, mate. I know that. I get that. You've said that repeatedly. And I do understand how people want to try and change this left-right distinction, although honestly, I don't think you really can. But I know people do want to do it. And I think many of them are sincere. As Alabaster says in the chat, you've got to say, if you're going to do anything, it's got to be in Minecraft. Exactly. When you're playing a video game or whatever it might be. I just think the amount of wiggle room that anyone on the right would get from the regimes that we live under is going to be vastly less than what they will give to either the Greens or the so-called Greens, I should say, who are basically really watermelon anyway. But or they will give to the Palestinians, or indeed they will give to the Israel supporters. All of those guys will get far more room. And if you want proof of that, you can look at any demonstration in London recently where you can wave Palestinian flags around as much as you like, and you can wave Israeli flags around as much as you like. But if you dare to show a Union flag, a British Union Jack flag, the cops will arrest you immediately.
Yeah, I know. So we abandon every tactic that doesn't work as soon as it's clear that it doesn't work.
So yeah, that's all I would say about that. Mitch, you haven't said much, mate. What do you think?
I don't. I mean, I would just say the situation's not hopeless. I'll just say, because I mean, Ataman, for example, he's already joined Homeland Party. I'll be joining him in let's say a month's time for argument's sake. So as soon as I've sorted some stuff out, I imagine AI. I imagine pretty much most people on the right are all going to join Homeland Party at some point because
I tend to agree.
Yeah, because they seem to. I mean, as UKIP would say, they've got back. So they've got a lot of the boomers, old BNP types, working flawlessly alongside the Zoomers, guys my age. So, for all intents and purposes, Homeland seem to have it on the pulse, so to speak. They know how to unite the nationalist movement in a way that that patriotic alternative, for example, could never do fully. So I'd say to anyone here, join the Homeland Party.
To agree.
I don't know if there's anything like that in Australia.
Adaman said he might join us for a bit. I don't know if he's going to. Adaman
by the way, the thing that I had
he might join us for a bit. But yeah,
cool. So the thing I had at 8 is cancelled, so I can actually stick around.
Okay. But I don't know how much longer we're going to go, to be honest with you guys, unless somebody has something they want to talk about, which is slightly different to what we've been talking about. Because I'm not sure. The fact of the matter is that to me, the basic thing about this is that you will only get so much room to do stuff on the right before the regime will come down on you like it's on the bricks, which they will not do to people who are broadly on the left. who are doing
Maybe we
stuff
should pretend
that
to
they
be on the left
basically
sometime.
support.
Yeah, maybe we should be fake lefties in some situations.
How would you suggest we do that, mate?
Like, for example, I can tell my story about oh, I did basket weaving for a while and they all backstabbed me and I saw the light and I came back to the left. Right? I can tell that story.
Okay.
By the way, do you mind if I do a quick plug?
Sure, mate. So long as it's not going to get my channel into problems, yes.
Thank you. So my channel is hopefully going to be put in the description or something like that. And it's just my name, which is all visible. Thanks, Iron Duke. And I'm going to start making some more serious videos that are a bit more political, as well as other things. So if you are interested in what I have to say, just check it out, subscribe if you like, and interesting things might happen. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on the stream, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. Like the last time you were on last week, I also put your a link to your channel in the comments under the video. I always do that for anyone who has a channel. So if you want to find Joshua or AI after this, there will be a link in the comments under the channel, a pinned link that you can go and find their channel. And if Mitch wants anything in there, I'll put that in there too. Although I don't think Mitch has a channel at the moment. But yeah, look, like I said, I think the issue is that anything we want, if someone else, I'm dissident right, I guess, I'm on the DR. I think anything the DR does, which is to say someone who is broadly nationalist and not anti their own people, is going to get a lot less wriggle room than anything other groups do that the regime broadly agrees with, whether they be pro-Zionist, pro-Palestinian, pro-net zero, or whatever else it is that the globalist lot who run us at the moment support. So that's my view about it. But, it's only my own view, and I could be totally wrong. I don't think I am, though.
I fall into the same trap all the time. It's only my view, but I think I'm right. It's very human, mate.
No, we cannot discuss snooker. If there's anything more boring than snooker in the world, I haven't found it. So
yeah, I suppose
someone in the chat wanted us to discuss snooker.
Yeah, we've got like 25 minutes. I suppose you can
Carry
close
on,
off. I suppose I know. I suppose the only other topic was that suppose 42nd anniversary of General Belgrano getting hit earlier this week, in terms of the Falklands War, because I don't think we talked about the Falklands War in terms of historically, because they said anniversary, Falklands War, 42 years ago and so on. In case that wants to be our final topic.
Yeah, that's a reasonable one. I mean, look, to let people understand, I was a 17-year-old when the Falklands War broke out, who was waiting to join the British Army because my father would not give me permission to do so. So I had to wait until I was 18, and then I could join without his permission. And I remember it very, very clearly. And it was the last really British war, if you want my opinion. Britain's been involved in quite a few wars since then, but they were basically American wars we were supporting. Whereas the Falklands War was actually British war. Sinking Belgrano was a completely legitimate thing to do because the ex-American cruiser, the Belgrano, which had armor plate and heavy guns for the 1980s, had it got into the British task force, it would have been extremely lethal to totally unarmored British frigates and destroyers. And it was trying to maneuver along with the Argentine carrier group, because the Argentines had a carrier back then, they were trying to maneuver to get into a position to attack the British task force. The British government's job is to protect the British soldiers and servicemen, sailors, etc., in that task force. And we sank her, and quite right too. And as a result, the Argentine Navy all scuttled back into port and didn't come out again, which undoubtedly saved not only British, but also probably Argentine lives. So, I mean, it was entirely justified to do it.
It's a
Falklands War was the last time I was really proud to be British, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a really British war when,
it was the last time I was really proud to be British.
It's a really British war when there are controversial moments that we get harangued over, whereas when we do controversial stuff in later wars like Gulf War or Iraq War or wherever, we never get harangued over some controversies. But with a real British war, sinking of Belgrano, for example, that was just evil on our part, even though the captain of a ship, but back in 2003 or 2002, whichever year it was, actually said, "Oh yeah, the British were actually right to sink it." I think Aubrey would like to know that IRA General Belgrano in World War II was named the USS Phoenix, which survived Pearl Harbor. So,
yeah, that's right. She was a Pearl Harbor survivor. I mean, the other thing is the Conqueror, HMS Conqueror, the Royal Navy SSN submarine that sank Belgrano. She could have sunk the two Argentine corvettes which were escorting Belgrano, but she didn't, because she assumed those two corvettes would then rescue all the survivors from the Argentine cruiser. And of course, that didn't happen. They in fact ran away, even though Belgrano didn't attack them at all.
Yeah, it's like
she deliberately didn't attack them so they could rescue the survivors.
Yeah, the thing is, one of the main reasons why there's such a heavy loss of life on Belgrano was because the bulkheads are poorly maintained. So that's why the ship sank. Because the ship was attacked with torpedoes at 2:57 p.m. 20 to 25 minutes later, the ship was fully sunk. It was just submerging because the bulkheads were poorly maintained. And it's quite. And I thought it would be better maintained given General Belgrano was generally put down as a flagship of the Argentine Navy at that time in terms of the Falklands War.
Well, apart from their carrier, apart from their carrier, Mitch, they had a carrier, the 25th de Mayo, I believe it was called, which was actually an ex-British carrier, by the way. It was a British light fleet carrier from the 1950s.
Yeah, there's two corvettes. Another two corvettes in the Argentine Navy called Granville, and the other one, which name I can't remember. They're also made in Britain, but sold to Argentina. And we still kept other British names to them, even as they were going to war.
They had the Argentines had two British destroyers as well. They had two Type 42 destroyers, which were the same as the air defense destroyers the Royal Navy was using back then. So they did have a number of ex-British warships.
Yeah,
and they had 4 submarines. They had 2 old American submarines, one of which the British managed to sink or destroy anyway. And they also had 2 quite modern German conventional submarines.
Is it that IRA Santa Fe?
Santa Fe.
In South Georgia, which
Santa Fe, yeah.
I can imagine just a poor look on the Argentine
side. It had to
side
beach itself in South Georgia because Royal Navy helicopters damaged it.
Yeah, because the thing was they couldn't submerge the
submarine
because it was in shallow water
great,
when it was found.
Yeah, it was, and the Royal Navy helicopters damaged it a lot with missiles and machine gun fire, so it couldn't submerge and it had to beach itself. In South Georgia, as you say. The other thing I thought was interesting is that AA did a stream earlier in the week when he was looking at, he's doing that stream on that British documentary maker. and he did one on Margaret Thatcher. And AA has
Curtis,
always been very.
Sorry, Adam Curtis.
Adam Curtis.
People wondering.
That's right. Yeah, and he did a documentary, that Adam Curtis, when he was looking at Maggie Thatcher. And the funny thing about this is, because quite a lot of that documentary was about the Falklands War, AA found himself agreeing with Margaret Thatcher on a great deal of the stuff about the Falklands War, which, is one reason I was never as anti-Margaret Thatcher as some people were, because she did have the balls to fight that war, which very few post-World War II British prime ministers would have had, to be honest.
Yeah, it was like from 1964 through to 82. Like, it was just a situation where I think it was Harold Wilson's government that started. They just didn't know what to do with the Falklands, so they just they're pretty much in the process of transferring it over to Argentina, including there was one point where I think James Callaghan was.
They wanted to, but the Falkland Islanders would never agree.
Yeah, and it's like I think it was under James Callaghan's government.
They wanted to transfer it. But
yeah, and I can remember there was one episode where
he sent a little tiny task force there. He sent a little tiny task force down there. He did.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was in 1974. I think it was Howard Wilson, or I can't remember if it was Teddy for Howard Wilson in charge at the time. There was a situation where, because by that time we built that airfield at Port Stanley, which was connected to Argentina, so we cancelled the monthly supply ship that was customary for, of course, supplying the Falklands with like food and fuel and such. So then the Argentines, they capitalized on that by passport controls. So no one who was, if you were not an Argentine civilian, you could not get these supplies, blah, blah, blah. So pretty much the Falklands were pretty much blockaded in de facto terms, and the British government at the time didn't do anything. Which, that sort of episode that was pretty much just a sign of, oh yeah, but we don't care about the Falklands. So in a way, that kind of preempted the Falklands War.
They wanted to get rid of them, Mitch. The British government would have preferred to have gotten rid of the Falkland Islands. The only reason they weren't able to is because the Falkland Islanders themselves, who are 99% British, would not allow that to happen. That was the only reason. And I mean, even under the Thatcher government, John Knott, who was the Defence Secretary at the time, had plans to cut the Royal Navy quite heavily. I mean, the Royal Navy in 1982 was huge compared to today. In 1982, the Royal Navy had something like 70 destroyers and frigates, and today we have 16. 16. But back then, Knott was going to do quite big cuts. And for example, the carrier HMS Invincible, which ended up fighting in the Falklands War, was going to be sold to the Australians at that stage.
Yeah.
And it was these sorts of moves which made the Argentine government think, we can invade this place and the Brits will never fight for it because they're just giving every single signal that they won't.
Yeah, I think what was the point where I think the Australian government actually cancelled the sale and just told them, oh yeah, keep it so that you can take back the Falklands, because at that point, when the invasion actually happened, because you had New Zealand, Canada and Australia, they all just, as soon as war was declared, pretty much, they all got behind us and took away their ambassadors.
They pretty much did, yeah.
So,
yeah. What made it bad though is
what
made it bad, Andrew, because the night of the invasion, of course, because the Argentines, night of the invasion, came across the small battalion that was already stationed there, along with aspects of civil defence as well, was that communication to London at the time was there wasn't really much coming back from Whitehall. There was like a breakdown in communication. So the actual, the point where everyone in government who were informed about it was that the invasion had just happened, and that in itself was sort of a breakdown as well on communication. I mean, this is before Cobra and everything, so you Cobra meetings and all that go on at the moment, but during sort of crisis, during a government crisis, but yeah, I mean, there was the Foreign Office and were really surprised by this, completely surprised by this.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like,
I will just say that, like, the return of sorry, Mitch, carry on, mate.
I was just going to say, on the aspect of Pinochet, the thing was, so the HMS Sheffield got hit like 42 years ago today because the Chilean radar system in the south of the country, I think, was out for maintenance repairs. And so we didn't have that forewarning about those super étendards fighters that the Argentines sent from airfields in Patagonia to attack, of course, HMS Sheffield, and which unfortunately sank on the 10th. So I just thought mention that a little bit. Chile actually really helped us a lot.
There was some mistakes. They did, but can I just say that there were some mistakes on HMS Sheffield, which was the first British warship that was sunk in the war. Like the officers were not where they were supposed to be, and there's a fair bit of evidence that that some officers on that ship had not started taking this seriously yet. Obviously, after Sheffield was sunk, then everyone started taking things very seriously. But there were mistakes made on HMS Sheffield, shall we say?
Oh, I thought that was more for the Sir Galahad incident where the Welsh Guards got.
Oh, there were mistakes on there as well, mate. That's a different story. Yes, that's a different story. But yeah, but Sheffield, there were some mistakes made. There were officers who were not where they were supposed to be on Sheffield when the engagement happened. But you know, I look. I'm not going to go on about that sort of thing because people lost their lives and what have you. But I think there is a good deal of evidence that when Sheffield was sunk, and as I said, she was the first British warship that was sunk, and was the first British warship that had been sunk since 1945 by the enemy. The things were not being taken as seriously as they should have been at that stage, shall we say? But yeah, it's the Royal Navy did really well in the Falklands War. There were only at most 2 other countries in the whole world that could possibly have fought the Falklands War in 1982, whose navies were strong enough to go the far end of the world and fight a war like that. Most nations just couldn't have done it.
Well, yeah, so I think John Knott was actually quite. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, like, when the task force came back, that was a good time to be British. You could actually be proud of your country for once, which has been all too rare of Britain since World War II, to be honest with you. But, you know.
Yeah, so I think John Knott. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's what Adam Curtis was sort of showing in the film, is that there was this, recapturing of a national spirit of unity, something which we haven't seen in a long time. And Thatcher rode the wave of that. It was, and then on the wake of that, you had like some new creation of English heritage. You had the encouragement of, English history in like medieval sort of villages and reenactments and sealed knot stuff, and it was, good stuff, and I don't. Say as AA said, it was all good stuff, good healthy stuff for the nation to be engaged with. It's just that it's all gone to shit since then.
Yeah. It was kind of great. I went down to I went down to Portsmouth like as a teenager when HMS Hermes, the Royal Navy flagship, came back, the aircraft carrier, and like the whole of the shore of Portsmouth was just a sea of white ensigns and Union flags, and the bands were playing Royal Britannia, and it was kind of real for once, It was kind of real for once, and it was really a fabulous atmosphere. And I think, Britain has largely lost that stuff. But yeah, for once, it was really kind of good. Mitch is entirely correct in the chat. He's been trying to say this for a while now, I believe. You wanted to say about John not being pessimistic. And Sir Henry Leach, who was a very old-fashioned Royal Navy officer, he was the guy who said to Mrs. Thatcher, look, we can send a big task force down there and take these islands back. And if we don't do that, Britain won't be Britain anymore. And he was, of course, entirely correct.
Yeah, it's like the thing about I think that's one thing that no one really. I mean, except that Australian fellow you put in the Discord, in terms of like appreciating the full logistical burden the Falklands War kind of posed, because at that time that's probably why John Knott was so pessimistic. He didn't think the logistics were doable, whereas Henry Leach and others were just like, oh yeah, we can actually do it. Like we can, because he had to press gang a load of cruise ships, I believe, to act as to take it to ferry the commandos, SAS, SBS, Marines, etc. There's also Gurkhas who unfortunately were cheated out of fights because of events later on the land campaign. But it
was the Argentines surrendered before the Gurkhas were about to do their operation. So
yeah, I can't remember. I think it was Two Sisters. I could be wrong. Where the Gurkhas were deployed and they were attacking uphill. Only to find there were no Argentines to fight against because they all ran away back to Port Stanley.
That's right. And because they were bombarding Port Stanley, the artillery, and then they got over the radio the information that there had been an agreement of a ceasefire, negotiations were open. And so they were effectively called off. They weren't certain about the forces on the mainland though. The forces on the Falkland Islands had officially surrendered. If I remember correctly, Menendez wouldn't accept the term surrender. In the official document, though.
Although that's in fact exactly what it was. It was a surrender.
Well, it was a surrender. Yes.
Someone in the chat has been asking me to talk about SAS troops in Chile. The British Special Forces, I believe, and this has never been confirmed, but I do believe there were British, either SAS or perhaps Royal Marines SBS guys, we don't know, who were watching Argentine airfields and would send a message to the task force whenever Argentine aircraft were taking off. I mean, obviously, this was useful, but it was only, they couldn't tell them what the target was, of course. There was a British operation which was set in train to go and attack the airfield where the Argentine Super Etendards were based, which were the only aircraft they had that could fire the Exocet missiles. And this went wrong, as special forces operations sometimes do go wrong. And a helicopter had to crash land in Chile. So and Chile, for their own reasons, because they have border disputes with Argentina down in the south. They've more than once almost come to war with Argentina over these. And for their own reasons, the Chileans were supporting the British pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I feel for a second, I thought he was on about that Pebble Island one for a second about the airfield, but I don't know the one on the mainland. You know, so so
yeah,
there
was going to be a raid on mainland Argentine airfield, but it didn't work. The helicopter had problems, and they had to force land in Chile, and I think that's the one the guys were talking. So yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah. Of course, the Argentines and the Chileans had their own, because Argentina claimed islands in the south with Chile, so
Yes.
and they had made threats and with them as well. So there's no surprising that Pinochet and the government there were more friendly with Britain than Argentina with Gualtieri's regime.
Yeah, they were quite happy for the British to write down Argentine military strength. Yeah, if the Brits were going to take out Argentine air assets and warships and so on, the Chileans were quite happy about that.
yeah, what's funny was I think pretty much like all the mountain division,
All right,
all the
guys.
experienced Argentines were fighting, or actually on the border, while they sent conscripts to hold the Falklands, who were no match, of course, of the troops we sent.
They weren't all conscripts, Mitch. They weren't all conscripts. There were Argentine special forces in the Falklands. There were also very well trained Argentine Marines in the Falklands. They weren't all conscripts by any means.
Yeah, but you can imagine the majority were in terms of those who had to defend the positions at, let's
Oh,
say, Goose Green.
Yeah. The bulk of their troops were absolutely conscripts, but if you look at the action that the Scots Guards, for example, fought in the Falklands, they were mostly taking on and they defeated an Argentine Marine battalion who were absolutely not conscripts. They were regular troops.
Yeah, that kind of puts it in perspective and like how, because if I was at the Battle of Mount Longdon, which the problem with that battle was you had all these razor-sharp rocks that just like presented just nothing more but choke points for attack. So it took up a sacrifice of, I can't remember his name, Ian Mackay or something like that, of the Scots Guards. Like it took his sacrifice to be able to be able to overcome the Argentine defensive area, because the other two areas, Two Sisters, and I can't remember the third one further down south, where we broke their defensive lines west of Port Stanley, and then that kind of broke the back of Argentine defense.
I think Ian Mackay was a sergeant in the parachute regiment, but apart from that, I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was Scots. I thought he was Scots Guards. I'm going off.
I think Ian Mackay was actually. No. Yeah, no. The two guys who won the Victoria Cross in the Falklands were both parachute regiment, and they were both posthumous.
Yeah, I know there was Herbert Jones at Goose Green. I must be wrong.
And Mackay was also a para. I'm 99% certain he was a para. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting war. There's a couple of really good videos on YouTube, which if you watch both of them is about 8 hours long, possibly even 9 hours long, which is probably the best thing on YouTube about the war in the Falklands. And I can't remember the name of the channel now, but it's an Australian dude. The first one is mostly about the Sea Air War. Thank you.
Hypo hysterical history.
I'd be grateful. Yeah, the first one's about the Sea Air War. That's it. Hypo historical history. That's correct. He's an Aussie guy actually, and that's the best thing on YouTube about the Falklands War. If you really want to go into detail about what happened, it's very well done, and there's lots of nice film and photographs and all this kind of stuff in it. So yeah. All right, guys. Anything you'd like to shill, Mitch?
No, not from me. I've already shielded the Homeland Party. So.
AI? You did.
Well,
AI, what you would like to advertise?
Oh yeah, me and Mitch did a stream recently on my channel talking about the medieval world of Kingdom Come Deliverance, like the early 1400s Bohemia. It was a pretty good discussion. We talked about the Cumans, Hungarians, Czech, Slovak, Moravians, and the geopolitical at the time. We talked a bit about the Hussites, the Hussite wars, the war wagons, all that sort of stuff, and just general aspects around that.
Cool.
Jan Žižka as well. I'm sure you're aware of him as well. But very influential figure in Czech history, military history as well. So yeah, we talked about that. Next Saturday, I will not be. It's around about 9 o'clock, so I won't. I won't be on your show. But I'll be on Hitman, and we'll talk about the life of Alexander the Great.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting. That'd be
interesting.
I suggest people go and watch that after this stream, of course.
But, yeah. I was gonna say I was trying to word it in a way where I don't say coach
and
reviews,
your channel.
Yeah, AI
Shire. No, sorry. Your channel is AI Shire Tory, I believe, is it?
Yeah, AI Shire Tory.
All right. There will be links in the description later on, guys, for AI and also for Joshua, who was on earlier. Go and check that out. I'll put them in there in due course. Thank you very much to my guests. That's Joshua, who had to go, and also for Mitch and to AI. And we will see you next week for Splendid Isolation 171. And in the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down.